Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hi, it's Jessa, back for another episode of the Better Sex Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. I'm delighted to be here again, bringing yet another fascinating conversation. I just love doing this. Before I launch into this week's topic and introduction, I just want to make sure that you know that there are a few ways that you can ask questions, that you can interact with me. So first of all, you can always leave a comment on any episode right at the bottom of that, and I will see that and respond. But also on the website, bettersexpodcast.com, on the footer of every page, there's a little, it's called a widget, a little thing with a microphone where you can record a question for me. And if I decide to, I might answer it on air, in one of the episodes. So you might get your answer that way. I'll certainly let you know if that's coming up. The other thing you can do is make sure you're on my mailing list. If you go to bettersexpodcast.com or seattlesextherapist.com, either way, you can join the list. You get access to a free monthly webinar that includes Q&A. So that's another place where you can go and get some questions answered if you so desire. So part of the podcast, I certainly am focused on sex, better sex, helping you improve your sexual relationship. But we also have some episodes about relationships in general, because of course you can't take sex out of the rest of your relationship. It all interacts. So part of my conversations involve, what makes a relationship successful in general, where it's not totally specific to sex. Today is one of those days. So I am interviewing Stan Tatkin, who has written a book called We Do, Saying Yes to a Relationship of Depth, True Connection, and Enduring Love. He's written other books too, Wired for Love, Wired for Dating, Your Brain on Love. He's sort of fascinated with the neurobiology of attachment and relationship. So we talk today about what it means to function in a secure way in relationship, what kind of attitudes and approaches are going to help you be successful and have a relationship that's fulfilling and engaging and happy, basically, instead of something that's mutually assured destruction, as he put it. So it's a great conversation. We do talk about sex also in the second half. You'll see we get there. He's got a whole chapter on sex, but we're laying the groundwork about what sets you up for a really successful relationship. I hope you enjoy it. Stan, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, where do we start? I think I'd like to start with what you covered in the beginning of the book about what makes healthy relationships. Like, what are the factors that matter?
What contributes to healthy relationships?
Yeah.
Well, I don't use the word healthy only because that has a particular meaning to people. Successful, happy relationships is what we call secure functioning. Secure functioning means that people operate, under principles of fairness, justice, and mutual sensitivity, and that partners commit to being fully cooperative and collaborative with each other. Okay. In other words, these are two different people, and they're sharing power together, and they are governing each other and everyone else.
Okay. So what makes this so hard?
To do that?
Yeah. I mean, because people struggle in relationships, right? That's who comes to your office and my office. And
I think what makes it hard is being human. The human being is perfectly imperfect. We have, I call them error potentials. These are things that have to do with the brain and how we're wired. And this in and of itself makes all relationships difficult, not to mention the adult romantic primary relationship. And that has to do with the brain being tweaked more for war than love. We have something called a negativity bias from birth. That means that all things being equal, our brain will tend to go negative. That's a survival mechanism. And we have a brain that takes shortcuts, that operates by memory pretty much only, that acts and reacts through recognition systems that are lightning fast. And that disables us from knowing what we're doing most of the time, which leads to making things up. So human beings have problems with communication. Even on a good day, human communication is not good. Mm-hmm. We mostly don't know this because if we're feeling good, we give each other leeway. But if we're not feeling good, we start to feel that pain that we're mostly misunderstanding each other much of the time. Our memory we try to count on is illusory and not reliable.
Right.
Yet people will fight over their memory,
yes,
which is because they're both probably wrong. And our perceptions are like funhouse mirrors, always being altered by our state of mind. And so we have that just there. We have human beings that basically are self-centered, aware of what isn't, what's missing, moody, fickle, and, given to misunderstand, right? Act and react very, very quickly. So what could possibly go wrong with all of this?
Yeah, you're making it sound like a seriously uphill climb.
Well, it is, unless you understand what it is to be human and you cut yourself and each other slack a bit, but then also understand how these errors are going to play a role in unsettling the two of you. And if you don't understand how this works, can lead to threat. Threat is one of the big things we worry about in relationship. Small T threat, the kind of, when you roll your eyes at me or turn your back or talk to me in a certain tone of voice. And, that is something that my brain recognizes because of my history. And I could take that any number of ways. And again, it's very easy to go to war and to take it negatively. So, yeah.
And is the same part of our brain activated with those small T threats as with the big ones? The lion coming at us kind of thing?
Well, the brain actually, after a while, doesn't know the difference.
Okay.
And if you and I continue to make mistakes and injure each other without repair, we don't do anything to fix it, do anything to correct our errors, then we start to accrue a feeling of unfairness and insensitivity, which leads to threat. And if that continues, it builds on itself and it becomes biological. So as much as you and I love each other, we could at times view each other as predators. And this is because we've been poor managers of distress, poor managers of this whole business of, real time being too fast and us acting and reacting so quickly that we don't even see the errors that we're making.
Wow. Okay.
And for some people, they don't care, which is a whole other matter.
Yeah, that's true. And I suppose I was going to say that might be a matter of time, but I suppose that's a matter of upbringing as well.
It's both. We're sort of built this way. So even if you had a perfect childhood, you too can feel threatened in any relationship. It in some way comes down to skill, but it also comes down to capacity. When we look at the animals that are people and the couple in their milieu, we can see them moving at speeds that are so fast that it's very hard for anyone to know or track what's going on at any given moment. But people are doing things that signal threat or danger to the other, and then they're amplifying each other. This is part of the human condition. If you look around, you can see it everywhere. And so what mediates this are two things. One is being face to face and eye to eye and being present and attentive. That's one.
Okay.
And the other is developing what we call shared principles of governance. That means that we come up with principles that we both believe in that will protect us from each other. And that holds us in. In a way, this is how societies work. Civilization can only work when people believe in a shared mythology. And like the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Everyone agrees on that. And that's how everyone stays safe or safer from being killed. So the same thing with a couple, which is the smallest unit of a society. They have an easier job. It's only two people. They have to decide what they both agree on that these are big ticket items that protects them from each other and allows them to govern everybody else as well. So these are principles that, like, we tell each other everything. We put the relationship first. People can pick their own, but these are an example.
Yeah. But do you, as a therapist, right, as a clinician, do you have some ideas about some of those agreements that might serve couples better than others?
Yes, as a clinician, in following the rules of secure functioning, if two partners agree that they are going to put their children first, and they can argue well why it's a good idea for me and you, right? They can do it in both directions. Why it serves a personal good and a mutual good. Then I'll say, great, my blessings. I hope this goes well. However, if they agree or if they disagree, one says I put my work first and the other wants the relationship first, that could be a deal breaker, and that has to be dealt with because it will cause a whole host of problems. I personally believe that the best is to put the relationship first. And people have to understand that doesn't mean you lock your kids in a closet with a pool of water.
Right.
That everybody benefits from the partners, the roof of the house, the big honchos, the big executives, that they're in good order, that they're fully resourced, that they're good at managing each other. If they're good, everyone benefits. If they're not, everyone suffers. So that's why I think the very best is putting the relationship first. And that allows both partners to make decisions that are going to be in alignment with each other's values.
And it seems like, I think in the book, you have some ideas and suggestions about how to get to some of those value discussions, right? Because it seems to me that some of these we only find out when we've bumped into them. Like we have these expectations or ideas that we're not even aware of, right?
We do, and our culture is partly to blame. There are subcultures like the police department and the military and other cultures where you have to be collaborative and cooperative. You have to work together in order to survive. It's no laughing matter. You either work together and see that you are interdependent on at least one thing, and that is together you survive, or you don't if you're not working together. We don't have that in our culture. Other places where there's a lot of environmental danger, they get it. They understand that they have to stick together, to work together. We don't. We still wonder whether we're with our soulmate, and that's a luxury. And so there's nothing in our culture that says, you guys, this is not about romantic love. It's not about eroticism. It's not about having common interests necessarily. It's about reliability, trust, interdependency, radical loyalty. Because if you don't have each other's backs, if you don't see each other as in the foxhole together, the environment will get you. The world is not a safe place. It's never been, probably never will be. And two people get together to protect each other, right? They should become experts on each other, expert caregivers, whisperers for each other. They do things for each other that nobody wants to do unless they get paid a lot of money. That's the gig.
Yeah. Is this what you refer to as sort of the couple bubble?
The couple bubble, if people are attracted to that term, it's funny because that doesn't, we've tried to create a visual and the visuals never look good. So, but the couple bubble basically means that you and I protect our ecosystem. the air we breathe, the water we drink. We're good stewards of our safety and security system. Therefore, we check with each other. We don't. We protect each other in public and private. We govern together.
Hmm.
We take good care of one another. And if one of us messes the environment, we both will suffer.
Hmm.
So a couple bubble basically means that we see that we're mutual stakeholders in the same things, such as mutually assured destruction if we choose to, or mutually assured survival and thriving. We could choose that too. So it's a decision, and it's in line with everything we know about attachment, infant and adult attachment, that the primary system operates by different rules than friendships and siblings and other relationships, right?
Yeah.
People will say, oh, I don't have this problem with my friends. And the answer to that is marry one of them and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a whole different animal.
Well, it certainly sounds to me that you're saying love is not the most important thing. But I'm not even really hearing you use the word love at all.
Love is there to jettison us, the beginning, the exciting love, the addictive form of love, jettisons us into a relationship. There are all sorts of neurochemicals and drugs that pour into our brain and our body that make us super people in the beginning. We can do anything, right? We're
Right.
highly sexual. We don't have sexual insecurities suddenly. There is no problems with erectile dysfunction yet. There is no problem, right? So we're on drugs, and that is nature's way of saying, procreate, get together. Nature is not saying, I have a plan for a long-term relationship. You're on your own after 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets us into one. And then what must happen? That initial excitement can be recreated if people are skillful. But that novelty can't be.
Right, right.
We know each other. That ship's sailed quickly. But a different kind of love begins to become earned day to day by this radical devotion to each other's needs and happiness, that we are in each other's care, that we accept each other as full burdens, and that daily, little by little, these acts of loyalty and devotion and care for each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
It translates into a mature kind of love that is irreplaceable. It's earned.
Yeah. And this is sort of a big question, but what do you make of it when what's best for me is different than what's best for you? Because when you're talking about caring for each other and putting each other's needs first and things like that, there certainly are places where they are in direct conflict, mutually exclusive.
That's right. I'm going to, instead of my using an example, give me an example of good for me, bad for you, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, I'm going to think it off the top of my head. I want to take a job promotion that would move us to Denver, and you don't want to go. But that's a big one. I'm even thinking small ones. Like I want to join the softball team that's going to have me practice on Tuesdays, and that was our bowling night or something.
Okay, so let's take that one. Secure functioning couples, or people who are socially emotionally complex, are able to create win-win situations. They use attraction to get each other to do things and never fear threat or guilt. So let's take that last one first. I am doing something that is at your cost.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I have to make it worth your while. Okay, so how about if we do this, sweetheart? If I can do this something again, I will do this for you. No, that doesn't work. Okay, how about this? And you, as a partner, have to throw in also. You can't just say no. You have to say no, but I would be amenable to this, right? And we will quickly come to something where it sums up for both of us for now. And the reason for doing this is to skillfully avoid having to litigate something that happened already.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we're moving forward in lockstep with no muss, no fuss, and there's nothing to look back at and regret. So that's why we spend the extra effort to make it right. Bargaining is how we do that. To expect that we want to do the same thing at the same time is ridiculous, because
Right.
except in the beginning, the chances that you and I want to do the same thing at the same time are nil. So
Right.
how are we going to do this? Well, either we're going to split and go our own ways and do whatever we want, or we're going to drag each other there and accrue unfairness and resentment, or we're going to bargain and make it good, make it worthwhile. And that's how you do it. Now, the big one is more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing, though.
So I get that, in the book, you have laid a lot of this stuff out, and I can see the benefit of entering a relationship with this mindset and realizing what we're getting into, and, we're creating win-wins. We have each other's back. But I'm thinking about my clients who are often far down a different path, right? They've not come into the relationship equipped for this,
Right.
this idea of a win-win and bargaining. I mean, they're so far from that. Are these skills that people can learn? Is it ever too late to really adopt these strategies and start to live a different way?
It's never too late, because if people, and this is the therapist expecting secure functioning, if people look at reality, and that the fact that when you're in these kind of relationships, you might imagine yourself being shackled, your legs together, at least one leg. And if you had to move and do things, you'd have to work together.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to pull apart, that'll hurt. If you pull in opposite directions, you go nowhere. If you move too fast, you both fall. And so this is a reality that people, I think, are not oriented to, that this is a two-person psychological system, not a one-person system, which means people have to work together. And some of these people, you put them on an island and say, you're going to starve to death unless you work together, they'll do it.
Yeah, they're going to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, you lock them in a room and say, you guys don't get out until you come to a deal that works for both of you, they'll do it. So this is a matter of will and not so much a matter of capacity.
Okay.
It's will and being in touch with reality.
Right. Hey, I'm just taking a quick little break in the middle of the show. Most of you probably know, if you've been listening at all, that I have written a new book called Sex Without Stress. But what you may not know is that I have developed an online course to support you through the process. The book has a lot in it. It's a do-it-yourself process to totally transform your sex life, but it's hard to do it. And it's hard to do it alone without support. So I have been looking for a way to create an environment that's supportive and could help you actually get this stuff done. So what I've done is create an 8-week course. There are webinars that you can watch live or you can watch later. There's materials, there are exercises and directions, and then I'm going to offer live online office hours. This is where you can get questions answered and get input on your situation. It's not therapy, but it's a place to come and help you move through the process. The next cohort starts January 28th, 2019, taking enrollment all the way up until then. You can learn more at sexwithoutstress.com. Easy to find the online course information there if you want some more information. I would love to have you join me. All right, so let's move the conversation a little bit more to sex specifically, because you do have a whole chapter in the book on that. And
yes.
And, there were some suggestions of do's and don'ts.
Right.
That you've got, a few different topics and, sexual frequency, performance anxiety, talking during sex, things like that. Like, give us the laydown here.
Well, it's no secret that we live in a kind of screwed up culture when it comes to sex. That's no news. But again, going back to how the human mind operates, one thing is that we're always aware of what we don't have. And we're always looking for what is missing, which is a good way to be unhappy.
Yeah.
We're always comparing ourselves to someone else or something else. So this is an area that is rife with potential problems. Let's add to this. Sex requires something called contact maintenance and proximity seeking. Those are two terms out of attachment theory. And to the degree that people can tolerate a lot of proximity and lengthened contact maintenance, physical contact, is a degree to which they could have trouble, not just with sex, but with affection.
Mm-hmm.
So these are two areas that require a great deal. Now, remember, real time is too fast. We mostly don't know what we're doing or why. We're operating by memory, mostly reflexive, and we're going to make errors during lovemaking. And then we have a history. People make more errors, more mistakes, more empathic errors, misattuned moments that are uncorrected during sex than almost any other activity. So people get injured very, very easily, and they don't talk. They actually will create threat situations with performance anxiety, pressure, demands. And by the way, these demands are experienced subjectively. I'm not necessarily making a demand on you, but my signals are interpreted as a demand.
Yes.
And if you came from a childhood of where performance and appearance was everything, you are very sensitive to any demand, and your body will shut off.
Yeah.
So we have a biological and neurobiological issue here, whereas if certain brain areas are being overused, your body cannot function. These areas are very good for when you're trying to move through the world, but they really don't work when you're trying to create flow, not thinking, but just be in the flow and being able to merge in the moment and play. And so we have now a brain issue that's on top of this whole thing that's going to create problems in body function. And then we have our day-to-day stressors, where we don't have time, children not getting enough sleep. And then we have moving through time and physiological changes like aging or pre-perimenopausal moments, or surgeries, medications, drugs, and alcohol. What could possibly go wrong again, right?
Exactly.
Everything.
Yes.
So I think the way I tend to think of this is that we have sex for procreation. We have sex for orgasm. And orgasm is no small thing. It's pretty good. It's good for what ails you. It's like a medicine. And there's nothing wrong with just having orgasms. But it's really there for deepening our knowledge of one another, of friendship, healing, working through trauma together, curiosity, and it's play.
Yeah.
And when it becomes too precious, there is no play. It becomes serious business.
Right.
And becomes something apart from any other thing that couples will do. It's another couple exercise. And yet people don't see it that way.
Right.
So it becomes a bummer.
Yeah. This is what I deal with in my office all the time as a sex therapist, right? Sex is a bummer, serious business. So like fraught is a word that my clients will use. So what are the do's and don'ts? Like how do people navigate this minefield?
I think this whole idea that starts with secure functioning is important, that people are responsible for being transparent and letting each other know what's going on in their heads.
Okay.
That people are clear in their communication and don't simply create gaps in their communication that you would drive a car through. Because we have to remember that what the brain doesn't hear or see, it fills in, always fills in. And because of that negativity bias, you don't want it filling in with something you're not going to like.
Yeah.
So, there are very simple things, there are people who will turn and walk away to get something without telling the partner. Oh, honey, I'm still with you. I'm just going to walk and pick something up here, but I'm listening. I'm doing this, but I'm really doing that. Something that bridges, that lets the other person know and doesn't assume that they're going to know what you're doing or what your purpose is, that would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, it sure would.
Slowing down and making eye contact and being present with each other, that this is lovemaking. This is lovemaking. Lovemaking is not just having sex. It is it's being sensitive to one another. It's being curious. It's asking, questions. When I say talk during sex, I'm not talking about the annoying kind, which is to distract.
Right.
This is the kind of talk that's again, about making sure that we're not implying or leaving gaps that the other will fill in incorrectly, that we're making things easier, not harder. that we're interacting collaboratively and not going solo.
Mm-hmm.
That this is an interactive regulatory process, nervous system to nervous system, and not autoregulatory. Autoregulatory is a normal function of self-care from infancy. We all do it, but we ought not to do it during sex. That's autoregulation is self-stimulation and self-soothing without you. So I'm basically playing by myself. A lot of people do this. A lot of sex addicts do this.
Yeah.
And the partner will feel alone, feel like they're an object, feel like they could be interchangeable. And that is because one partner isn't really playing with the other.
Yeah.
That if there's an injury, a misunderstanding, you take care of it right away. You don't wait. You don't wait. You want to correct it now because you don't want it to be remembered. Memory is formed by anything intense that lasts too long. And skillful people take care of a business immediately, and they don't wait.
Yeah.
That it is there to be friends, not to perform, not to be a porno star, not to make your partner, new again because you're bored, because you can't find the baby and the novelty, the strangeness in your partner. There's so many things we do during sex that are rude and inconsiderate.
Yeah.
And why there? So I think the couple therapist, the sex therapist will do well to stage the antecedent to sex if there is a problem with the couple. Not, of course, the sex act. This is a PG thing.
Right.
To stage it, bit by bit, frame by frame, like going back to the scene of a crime, the scene by investigator with the chalk on the ground. Let's take it from the top and get your thoughts and impressions and perceptions and movements and acts step by step and see what you guys are actually doing. Because the antecedent generally shows everything.
Yes.
All the mistakes that they're making, all the misunderstandings,
right.
all the ways that they're not caring for each other, where things are falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
People don't know that they're making these huge mistakes constantly.
Yeah, it's a powerful intervention. I certainly do this with people all the time, is walk step by step. What did you see? What did you think? What did you do? And by the time we finish that conversation, it's like I barely have to say anything. It's so obvious.
Everyone,
where it's all out there like a movie where they've misunderstood each other and where they've gone wrong and what they can start to do differently.
You're a person after my own heart, because that's exactly what I teach, and that is, I think, the thing to do.
Yeah.
If there's time, you can always go to these pivot points, these points where both of them could have done something different.
Yes.
To the end. And so you go back, knowing what you know now, what would you do? Want three things. What would you do differently at this pivot point? And then both of them have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I haven't done training with you yet, although I'm going to. But I already do a lot of this stuff. So
you already do it.
Nice that we're on the same page. Another thing I'm struck by is your idea of the win-win situation. And I know that clients get stuck treating their sex life like that. I mean, it seems strange to say, but not just each sexual encounter should certainly be a win-win in some way, but just their sex life as a whole. When people get caught up in desire discrepancy and they're fighting about frequency and they by the time they're in the therapist's office anyway, they're forgetting that they need to collaborate on this in a way that it really works for both people.
Yes, and this whole idea of frequency difference and libido difference, in a couple situation, things are hardly ever what they seem. It is not uncommon for the person who thinks they want a lot to feel stronger because they're with someone who seems to want so little. And they actually amplify each other's extremes, and they make each other do the very thing that makes them feel that they want less or more. Mm-hmm. So that's sometimes illusory in the couple. But I don't know about you. Do you find extreme differences in libido, even from the beginning in couples?
You mean from the beginning of their relationship?
Even from the beginning, extreme.
I don't know about extreme. Certainly sometimes by the time they're coming into therapy, because things have happened in life that have have changed somebody's
Yes.
libido a lot, something like that. But no, I find that, I think people don't get together if they're terribly different in so many ways,
That's my thought as well. And when I see it, I'm very suspicious of that.
Yeah.
There are people who, as they move through time, I think link libido with youth and for being further away from death. And so I've seen many people who are become more existentially afraid of growing older, and that many of these people actually seek certain drugs that also increases their libido, which tells me something.
Right.
And then they'll make the matter of sex so important that they're willing to leave their partner for it, which also says something about, that their relationship was never really secure functioning.
Right.
It's a very complex area.
It is. It's fascinating, though. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you or that you'd want to touch on before we wrap up?
Oh, I'm sure there is.
Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty more. We should do another interview at some point. But
I think that most everything can be talked about and worked out if people, have the spirit of collaboration and cooperation.
Yeah.
If they understand that where one goes, so goes the other, and that they're not separate agents anymore. They are and they aren't.
Yeah.
That there's a collective good here that everybody puts all their money on, right? I'm putting all my money on you and the kitty. You put all your money on me. We perform better that way when we think that we're both the best thing since sliced turkey. When people complain and they find fault, their partner will begin to underperform, as children will in a family where they feel that nobody likes them. And this is, I think, a misunderstanding of how two-person systems work, that people have to work together and they have to be sensitive and they have to remain fair and just, or they will suffer the consequences, which are terrible.
Yeah.
Whether it's sex or washing dishes or going on vacations or whatever. My hope is that people will learn more about weism as we are trying to move further away from meism. And we're not the only people who are doing this. Harville Hendricks, Helen Hunt, Sue Johnson, Dan Siegel. A lot of us who are experts in the field belong to a group called Relationships First. And one thing we all have in common is we believe the culture has spent too much time in the I-ism, me-ism, and that we're suffering because of it. Yeah. So that this book hopes to push that idea forward into the we do, not I do.
So just if you would say a word about where people can learn more, your website, where they find the book, things like that.
Well, people can find the book everywhere where books are sold. Amazon, of course, is the easiest.
Right.
And people, if they're interested in training their therapists or psychiatrists or in the mental health field, they can go to the PACTinstitute.com, PACT, thepactinstitute.com. And they can also find out about our couples retreats that we do around the country and around the world. We have one coming up in March in Costa Rica for 7 days. And so we still have some openings for that. That's always wonderful.
Okay, great. I'll stick those links up in the show notes too so people can find them easily.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It was a delight.
It's my pleasure. You're wonderful. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.